want to thank a lot of people involved in this process. First of all, my colleagues. We all shared a vision about improving our city's transportation network, about mobility, and the economic impacts for the city's presence today and for our future. And you heard residents and community partners, institutions, employers, all talk about the long-term benefits. We've done our best to address the concerns. I want to thank staff who worked very hard, and our future partner, Brightline. We're very excited to have your presence in our city.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
So with that, we'll take a few questions, please.
There were some concerns tonight about, they talked about, I don't know if the numbers are accurate or not, but some people in there were talking about the numbers for Virgin over the last year or so. What are your concerns, what are your reactions to those concerns, and how do you alleviate those concerns among the residents we're talking about?
I think Mr. Goddard can better talk to the specifics on financials, but the city worked very hard to put in strong default protections in our lease to make sure that our residents were covered in the unlikely event that anything went wrong. We've got a lot of protections in there to make sure that the city's well protected.
Can you go into those protections a little bit?
Sure, there are a number of default provisions in the lease that require Brightline to maintain regular train service, to meet all of their obligations, to be responsible for the operations and the expenses for the garage. So all of those are in there, and they were tightened up after draft and pushed back by the city council and collaboration with Brightline.
And what you said before about you'll have to wind up at the parking garage anyway.
Well, that's the worst case scenario, but the best case scenario is that Boca Raton is on the Brightline network, and we're going to reap the benefits that other cities and other mayors have universally told me across the board of the benefits that their cities have seen. We're looking forward to receiving them as well.
How do you respond to people who say you're basically giving this land away? It's public land. They're getting it for $1 a year. What do you say to people who say that we're selling out pretty cheap here?
Sure, as was discussed, it's not $1 a year. The obligations that Brightline's going to cover are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. So that's a significant cost that they're taking off our books that we'd otherwise have to incur. But more importantly, look at the bigger picture. Brightline's putting in more than $25 million in transportation upgrades. It's an amenity. We're talking about a public-private partnership. They're the ones putting in far more sums than we are. So we're giving away nothing. We're retaining ownership of these improvements. We're still reaping in the profits with a limited downside because they're incurring the risk for the operational costs on the garage.
Can you please talk about and maybe clarify a little bit kind of the process in this? I know there was some discussion tonight that this is just the lease agreement. This is not a site plan. Can you kind of discuss moving forward from here? Because I know there is a lot moving forward from here, and maybe Mr. Goddard, you can get on this too, of what Brightline now needs to do and kind of the timeline now you're under, because you want to get a train station up and running by the end of next year. So maybe can both of you kind of discuss that a little bit in the timeline that's going on now?
Sure, and I'll just start and then turn it over to Mr. Goddard.
Please.
There is a site plan approval. Brightline's going to work to get those documents in, reviewed by staff, and go through all of the required steps, including the traffic study that's required of the site plan approval process. And I think, Patrick, you can speak to it.
So beyond that, obviously, we've got a construction process. So we've already been in design. We've been working on a sort of loose design subject to all of the criteria that the mayor just stipulated. And as soon as we're able to break ground and begin construction, we think it's a 9-10 month construction process to deliver the project.
So the goal is to have a station operating here in Boca by the end of next year.
That would be the goal. That would be the goal.
Do you still anticipate breaking ground in March?
That is to be determined based on the process that the mayor just outlined. So I can't tell you exactly when it's going to happen. We'd like, it may be March, it may be sooner.
How do you respond to the county attorney from Indian River County's concerns that Brightline's ridership is flat and it's going nowhere, as he put it, and he said that you can't survive without public dollars, taxpayers' money? What do you say?
So we're obviously very. This is a night to celebrate. This is something that we have spent a lot of time with this team working on. Our mission in life is to create mobility in South and Central Florida and between South and Central Florida. A mission that we've been focused on for 6 or 7 years now. We're only operating a fraction of what our ultimate system is going to be. We are going to double our ridership year over year from last year compared to this year. All systems like this, if I had told you 5 years ago that a stranger would drive you to your next restaurant meal, you'd tell me I was crazy. There was 14 billion rideshare trips last year, right? So adoption for a new mode of transportation takes time. And if you look at Italo, Eurostar, the Acela, in fact, we carried more passengers in our first year than the Acela did in their first year. It's a very common thing with a modality like us when you're introducing it into a market that's not used to it. So we're very excited about the future. We are only operating, as I said, a fraction of what we ultimately intend to operate. We're only connecting 67 miles in South Florida. We will ultimately be connecting 235 miles, getting us up to Orlando, and hopefully beyond to the theme park area into Tampa. So we've extremely high hopes and a ton of optimism for where this system is headed.
What is your reaction to getting a train station in Boca?
I think it's phenomenal. I think with our mission of mobility, you look at all the secular trends that are out there. People are spending more time on their mobile phones. There are 50,000 vehicular accidents in Florida every year. There are 3,000 highway deaths in Florida on an annual basis. The pollution that's created by that, the byproducts of all of that, the stress, to be able to get people out of their cars. Traveling by train is 90% safer than traveling in a motor vehicle. It allows them to be productive. It allows them to spend time on things that they want to spend time on, as opposed to concentrating on the highway. So we think it's phenomenal. Creating more mobility is what we're all about, and to be able to do that in Boca, and obviously we're looking at Aventura and the Port of Miami as well here in South Florida. We think that is a game changer for the South Florida region.
And why do you want to be in Boca?
Boca is first of all, geographically, it's equidistant between our two existing stations. But aside from that, economically, it's a growing, burgeoning city, very progressive, with key headquarters that are located here, and a lot of employees who are living here but commuting to Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. So we see it as a phenomenal opportunity to create mobility for all of those people. And then going forward, as we expand the network north, we think it's a great destination, in addition to being an origin station for people to depart from and go to work. We think Boca Raton has a lot to offer, culturally and from a business perspective. I think that connectivity to Central Florida will be a game changer for this market.
Can you please talk about how moving forward, I know there are rightfully so some concerns about getting to Meisner Park and even connecting to different parts of the town, because originally there was supposed to be some sort of pedestrian bridge or something, and I know the city's exploring this, and maybe this goes back to the mayor a little bit. What's something moving forward that comes with, are there other studies? I know there has to be a traffic study, but even maybe doing an environmental study, is that something you'll address to maybe ease the mind and maybe look at partnering with, I know you've mentioned the TPA, is this something to make it easier to connect where people don't have to walk a few blocks, and how will you address that?
Yeah, so again, thematically, in each of our stations, what tends to happen is you get this network effect. You create a hub, we connect the hubs to each other, and then the hub starts to grow tentacles, and some of those are via private companies like rideshare companies, the micromobility market, which didn't exist 18 months ago, which now exists today, scooters, city bikes, guys in golf carts showing up and picking you up for nothing, to public partners. So in all three municipalities, we work with the free trolleys, we work with bus services. Obviously in Miami, we're connected to Metro Move or Metro Rail, Tri-Rail. So we're going to be looking for ways. I mean, we have time to create that network. I mean, I think that this is a very forward-looking team here. This council we've had a lot of discussions about where this can go, and they have a clear vision for where this city is going to go over the next decade and beyond. And that includes having, everybody understands, as if you look at the United States, 55% of the country today is urbanized. That's going to grow to 68% over the next couple of decades. More people want to live in city centers, and less people want to own cars, and we need other modalities of getting people around. So I think that's a discussion that'll be an ongoing discussion with this council and with the private sector over the next year or so, as we deliver the station.
What about safety measures themselves at the actual station as far as crossing the tracks?
So, the tracks already exist, and there's already trains running across them, right? The only difference here is, in order to access the platform, you've got to walk across the tracks, and you're walking across a pedestrian crossing, which is controlled by the same signaling system that controls the gates. So this is not an uncommon thing. It's new for some, but if you look at in Orlando at Sunrail, most, if not all, of their train stations have exactly that scenario, where you're, to get from one side of the tracks to the other side of the tracks, you're walking along a pedestrian crossing. So again, this is designed at a very, again, this is FRA sort of their highest standards, FDOT's higher standards. Would it be nice to have a bridge? I think like in Aventura, for example, that's where it makes a lot of sense. It's a 6-lane highway, and it's just, you just can't navigate that at grade. You can navigate this at grade, and we're going to work together to find better ways to navigate it at grade and make that pedestrian experience a very positive one, and of course a very safe one.
Okay, last question, we
Mr.
need to
Goddard.
get back to our meeting.
Why is Virgin missing its projections by so much?
So there's a difference between what I would argue is we've doubled our ridership year over year. We had about 500,000 riders last year. We're about 1 million this year. We're about 100K ahead of what Acela did in their first year. This is an evolving, and I addressed this already, this is an evolving business, it's a startup business. No one's ever done it before. So there's a difference between, if you look at our actual ridership study, that was a professionally commissioned investment grade ridership study, we're actually very much in line with what that said. We're just optimists.